Hello, everyone. My name is Lenore Meyer. I'm the technical director here at PAVED Arts. Thank you very much for coming, everyone. We have a wonderful workshop lined up that I'm very excited about. PAVED Arts is located on Treaty 6 territory here in Saskatoon, homeland of the Cree and Métis people. So thank you for remembering that. Also, we are co-presenting this workshop, first of a series that I'm really excited about with Holophon in Regina. So we've got lots of Saskatoon and Regina folks here today, which is really great. So Ian Campbell from Holophon is also here. So I'd like to pass things to Ian for a moment, and he can tell us a bit about Holophon and all of the wonderful audio sound-based workshops they have, and then we will pass it to Greta. So thank you for coming, and here's Ian.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a couple of words, tell you what Holophon is a nonprofit organization supporting sound art and experimental music in Saskatchewan. Organization was founded in 2008, centered on Treaty 4 territory in Regina. Holophon engages communities using sound as an artistic medium, promoting sound art and experimental music through live performances, concerts, workshops, community events, and educational programming. In our projects, we look for ways to unite artists and audiences across disciplines and specializations using sound as an integral artistic component. And you can find more about us at holophon.ca. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Greta and the Ableton Live workshop.
I just want to jump in real quick before you pop in, Greta. Sorry, because I was supposed to mention these things, I forgot. If you do have a question at some point throughout the workshop, sorry, I'm just muting people. So if you do have a question at some point throughout the workshop, please feel free to type it into the chat. There is a dashboard on the bottom of your screen you should be able to see, and there's a chat icon there. You can just click on that and type the chat into the chat bar. You can also raise your hand if you have a question that you prefer to ask verbally, and that would be in the reactions icon. So if the chat bar doesn't work for you, please feel free to raise your hand. Also in the reactions, there's various things you can add. If you're really liking something, or if you have a question, you can interact that way too. So also, if you don't need to be heard sonically, please remember to mute yourself. And if you forget, I might politely mute you just for the benefit of the workshop. So it's not a slight against anybody, just to keep things, the audio going smoothly. So with that, we will pass it to Greta Peart, aka ygretz, and thanks for coming. So here we go.
Hi everyone. This is so cool. I've never really been in a huge Zoom like this before, so this is sweet. I'm gonna share my screen. Okay. So is that everyone can see everything? It's all good. I'll test the sound here real quick. Sounds good.
Sounds good on my end.
Okay. So I have a little slide presentation kind of to help me stay organized mainly. So I'll just kind of be going through that. So yeah, first of all, I'm Greta. I make music under the name ygretz. And I just recently made a Google Doc that is kind of a guide sort of for anyone who wants to make music, doesn't really know. Oh my gosh, my Google phone is talking to me right now. Go away. So I just made like a Google Doc for anyone who would like to start producing, doesn't really know like where to start, because it can be kind of like a lot at first. So, but seriously, it's actually not that much. It just kind of to me, it's kind of like learning a program like this is more like learning just a program, like anything like Photoshop or like iMovie or anything like that. It's not really that different. So yeah, okay. So we'll kind of like do just kind of like navigation stuff and kind of how to do like basic things. The first half is probably going to be a little bit more like require more concentration, I guess. And then the second half, we'll have a little break, and then we'll do like make like a little beat, and then like look at a song. So yeah, and so at first, especially Ableton, for whatever reason, it kind of has this like reputation of being like maybe a little bit more like confusing, I guess, at first. And like when I first downloaded it, like it was like summer sometime, I can't remember. And I like downloaded it, and I didn't do a tutorial or anything. And I was just like, what is going on? And then I tried to make a song, and then I was like, no, and then I just like deleted it. So sad I did that, because if I would have just done a tutorial or stuck through with it, then I would have been able to make songs that summer. But anyway, so yeah, I already said that. YouTube tutorials are really helpful. Also, like, being a good Googler is really important. This is something that I've learned like with learning programs on my own. You always like will have questions kind of, and so in order to find answers for those questions, you'll need to like formulate these types of sentences that are like descriptive of what you want your answer to be, I guess. Like, since you're searching like this whole crazy web thing. So yeah, specific Google questions are great to use, I guess, to know how to do that. Sometimes you'll be looking for stuff for like an hour trying to find, you know, how to do something pretty simple, and then somehow you type in the right question all of a sudden, and then you get your answer like immediately. So and Ableton actually has their own tutorials like built right in. So if you go up, I don't know if you guys can see me and the like file menu up here.
Yep, we can.
Okay. So if you go to help, you can go down to help view, and it'll pull up this window over here on the right. And so they have a bunch of stuff in here. If you just want to take a tour and you just want to do like follow along like a text tour, you can do that. They give you like a little live set that you can load up already, and so it'll be kind of like a tutorial helping you kind of navigate this set.
Just a quick question in the chat, Greta. Someone's asking if you have any specific YouTube videos for beginners, because lots of them sometimes start at a level over people's heads. Maybe
Yeah.
if you can't think of any now, maybe afterwards we can link some with a post-workshop email.
Yeah, for sure. I don't like have any that come to mind, but I did link one like in my document that I made, my Google Doc. So there is one there. I'm not sure if it's like how kind of beginner friendly it is, but I think it was like whichever one that I pulled off YouTube. But anyway, so there is one there. Sometimes it takes a while, like if you're looking for kind of like a beginner tutorial, sometimes you might have to like click a few different ones to kind of find one that you think is gonna be more beneficial for you. So yeah, does that answer?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so there's this tutorial here that kind of explains like how to use the session view, which I'll get to explaining kind of like the different views. But this is a great tutorial, so that's a thing. So why I use Ableton is I just find it really easy to like make fun stuff fast. Like they have a lot of like really good like MIDI tools and stuff like that, and it's okay if you don't know what MIDI is, I'll explain that later. But they have lots of like cool tools that I don't think a lot of other DAWs really have, if that makes sense. So okay, so what a DAW is, a DAW stands for Digital Audio Workstation. So that's what that stands for. It's just like the software that you use. So Ableton is a DAW. So we'll be recording and editing sound using multiple tracks. So if we go into this view here, we can see that there's like all these different tracks. Here, I'll make my mouse a bit big. We can see over here, these are all the tracks. And they're kind of stacked on top of each other. Like if we play this song. And then we can solo different tracks to kind of see, okay, this is the drum track. And this down here is pad thing. There's all the vocals. You can kind of see like how it's like constructed with these tracks. Similar to like if anyone knows like iMovie or something like that, it's kind of the same thing. Going through time horizontally and then having all the layers stacked vertically. So like this. Yeah, so there's two different workspaces in Ableton. You can get to either one by clicking this little gizmo thing in the right upper hand corner, or you can just press tab.
Can I ask a question, Greta?
Yeah.
For me, as a beginner in Ableton, I found that those two different views of Ableton to be my first real confusing point in Ableton as to like why do they have two different kind of like, I don't know, workstation views, and like what's the point of having two, and are there benefits, or like how does your brain wrap around the two different, like the pros and cons of those two different views?
At first it was really confusing to me too. I don't think I don't think any other DAW kind of has the same thing going on. And I was really used to GarageBand, which is just like the timeline basically. Like it's just this. This view is like basically just like any view you would see in like a DAW. But the other one, I'll explain this. Okay. Okay, so it's kind of like sort of a way of coming up with ideas, I think was like originally like their idea for this. You can just record like little clips into these little slots. Like all of these little slots will hold like a clip. And you can just like, if I load, I'll take a more simple set because that other one was kind of crazy. So like I could record something into here. Or I could just double click and have like a MIDI clip going on in here, which I'll explain later on what that even means. But And so basically once you have like all of these filled up with clips, I'll go back to this other set. You can play them individually and record or you can go here and kind of organize them in parts. So you could basically just make a bunch of sounds in here, and then later on when you're like, okay, now I want to put this into like a composition or like an arrangement, then you would you could record them from here straight into the arrangement view, or you could drag them or drag like multiple ones. Oh, that didn't really work. Like you could drag whole sections like this out into there. So it's kind of just like a creative space, sort of. Something that's important to understand is that they're not like connected. That's something that I kind of thought at the beginning. I thought they kind of like were connected in ways, but they're really like separate workspaces. A clip that you have on the arrangement view is a different clip than what was over here. It just kind of like copies them in between. So does that make sense? Like, okay. And then when you kind of do stuff over here, you'll realize that this like gets grayed out. And that just means, like, I don't really know a like super great way of explaining this, but all it means is that you were doing some stuff over here and it just wants to let you know that you were doing some stuff over there, I guess. And so, yeah. So you just have to click this like little thing. When you play session view clips, this button will light up to indicate. Yeah, so sorry. I wish I could explain that better. I actually, like, when I started using Ableton, I never used the session view, like, at all. I've only recently kind of started using it to come up with, like, ideas. So you don't have to use it, like, by any means.
A friend of mine told me that session view is often really helpful if you're using a lot of loops.
Yeah.
But if you're not working like in a loop frame of mind, the arrangement view sometimes is better. So I guess it depends on what you're bringing to it and what you want to do.
Yeah. Session view is also really good for like if you're performing live. Like that's a huge component of like Ableton is like having these projects that you're able to kind of like control and like be like kind of spontaneous with and stuff like that on the fly or whatever. So instead of like just playing your song, you could like play different parts of it and change it up. So yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna open my other set. So mainly I think for this workshop I'll probably just be using arrangement view just because I'm not like an expert with the session view obviously. So one thing that's really important is like knowing how to navigate in the arrangement view. If you press space, it'll play and pause. If you click like anywhere in this viewport, it's kind of like where you are. So if I click here, then it'll start playing here. And this is like your little indicator of kind of where you are, I guess. You can zoom You can zoom like into track like this if you hold Alt and scroll, or on a Mac it's Command, but oops, this, okay, sorry.
Just have a question in the chat, Greta.
Yeah.
Someone's asking, since you can only have 8 tracks, is the horizontal view a way to add more sounds into that one track?
You can have more than 8 tracks. I think is it Ableton Lite that you're using?
Yes.
Where is my chat? My chat disappeared.
Yeah, it might be one of the limitations of the Ableton Lite, because I know when you have like the regular version of Ableton, the paid version, I think you can have almost unlimited amount.
Yeah, you can have like, I have tracks with like 40 or sets with like 40 tracks in them. So, yeah, that's like kind of a weird thing about the light version. I don't know why they do that. It's kind of strange.
Just to get you to buy to pay, I think. Yeah. Someone else is saying yes. That's the one of the limitations of light, which people probably run into right away. And it's a good bait to make you want to pay for the real program, I think.
Yeah, so there is like, if you're a student, I think they give a student discount, so there is that, I guess, but it's pretty expensive, I'll be honest. Okay.
Sorry, I ran into a thing today where I had an old version of Ableton and it wouldn't work with my current OS, and I had to like buy the new version, which is a whole dumb thing that happens. But yeah, it's just like they just want you to pay the money and will not give you all this stuff.
Yeah.
So this workshop is now about the problems of capitalism instead. No, just kidding.
Okay, this is also really important to know that this thing exists. So this little thing down here is like the info view, and if you mouse over anything, it will tell you immediately like what it is. So that's really handy. I still use it like all the time. I'm like, what is this button? Like, okay. So now I'll go and I'll kind of go like sort of clockwise through kind of what everything is. So I'm going to start here. This is your browser, and this is like where all of your stuff is. This is where like you get all your sounds, all of your samples, and all of your devices, your effects, and like all of that stuff is here. This categories is like the Ableton stuff. So all of their instruments, their little clips and stuff that they give you, all of the tools are in categories, and then in places it's just like your computer. So this is like all of this stuff on my computer.
But another question, if you could please describe top, bottom, or left, right where you are. Yeah, it's not easy to see the mouse.
Oh.
So, or your cursor. So I guess when, yeah, I think
Can you see my
agree.
mouse at all?
Well, it's just really small.
Oh,
So just, just saying up in the top left or bottom right or something like that, just to help us a little bit.
I changed it. I made it like super huge, but maybe it's like not working with Zoom. Can you see it now? Is it huge or is it small?
It's like normal size. It's not huge.
Okay.
Kind of like seeing a hockey puck in a hockey game. You have to just kind of really squint to find it. So
okay,
verbal cues would be helpful.
Yeah, I'll be more descriptive. So yeah, this is this browser in the left hand side. And you can see like all the stuff, like it says categories, and then it says places, it says collections. So that's kind of like, I guess, like your paints area, or like your paint palette basically. So I have it open like all the time because you're always gonna need to be like dragging stuff into your set. This top bar, like all of the tools at the very top, they're kind of just like the main tools that control kind of everything that's happening, sort of. In the top left side, you have like your tempo, so your BPM. You have your time signature. Like if you want your metronome to be on and off, it's this little thing there. And then like you have obviously stop. If you click stop twice, it'll go to the start. That's something that I like do all the time, and I wish there was like a shortcut for that, but I don't think there is. Yeah, so. And then there's record. Record is always like a circle, so that's good to know. Yeah. I don't really know. I'll be honest, I don't really know what any of the other things do up here except for this loop button. Can you see that I'm clicking this button here?
Yep.
Okay. So this is important. It's the loop. It just makes this loop section turn on and off. So if it's off and you have something that you want to loop, it will just ignore this thing. But if it's on, then it'll like loop this section. So if you're like recording something and you only want it to be like, let's say, just in this little part here, then you would like use that for like to just use that section, if that makes sense. And then there's also like these two things, which are punch in things. I don't really use them, but I should, because I didn't know they existed and I just found out about them. So, but I'm not going to go into huge depth with that, but just those are there. It helps with recording and like not going over into like your other stuff, like not recording over your stuff. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. Up here is like in the top right hand, you have your little piano thing that if you have it on, your keyboard, like your computer keyboard, will act as a MIDI keyboard. So, and then if you want to turn it off because you want to use like different shortcuts instead, then you would turn it off. But this up here, this is kind of important. This is like your CPU. If it's getting like up into the 60s or something like that, you'll probably get like if you don't have a very good computer and it gets up there, you could have like some crashes happening, or you could have like it skipping and stuff like that. So you always kind of like want to keep an eye on it if you have like a slower computer. And this, like if you have lots of plugins and stuff going on, that makes this go up. So sometimes like turning off plugins and stuff will help you with that. And also like your buffer settings, which I talk about in my doc. So if you're wondering about that, if you have like a slow computer, it can be a struggle. Like when I started, I had like a really old like MacBook, and then I had like a really, really old like audio interface, and they were just not happy with each other, and like it would always crash.
So the lower percentage is better,
Yeah.
ideal. Okay.
Okay. So now I'll explain like these tracks. There's two different types of tracks. So there's audio tracks, which is this guitar track down here, this yellow one. This is audio. It looks like a wave. And if you've ever like recorded something on your phone, you can like, they usually give you like a little view of what the wave looks like. Okay, and then there's MIDI. So MIDI is like information that your computer is using to make sound. So basically what it is kind of like electronic sheet music in a way. All of these different notes, like you can see there's this vertical piano right here. And all of these different notes. Here, I'll solo this.
Greta, is it possible for you to reduce the volume of the track in relativity to your voice?
Yep.
Just a little bit. Thanks. Especially while they're both happening at once, like when you're talking over the track.
Okay, how's that? Is that okay?
I think it's good.
It's really quiet to me for some reason. Maybe I'll turn up my...
Thanks.
Okay. So does this kind of make sense? Like kind of what's happening? Like you can kind of see that it's playing what this MIDI is. It's playing the MIDI. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like you're writing the notes in as opposed to playing them through a microphone or something.
Yeah, and so you can play, like you can record MIDI through like a MIDI device, which could be something that you would buy that's like a MIDI device, or you would just use like a regular piano that supports MIDI. Not like a grand piano, obviously, but like a little keyboard thing. So yeah, or you could just use your computer keyboard, which I do all the time, and I have a synth like right in front of me, and sometimes I just don't even bother to turn it on. I just use my keyboard. So yeah, so here's like a written description of this. So it doesn't make the sound, the computer makes the sound, and you can change it to be whatever you want it to be. So right now I have like this little piano sound, but if I wanted to make it this, that's really quiet. Then it changes it, so yeah. So yeah, just remember this little piano thing. If you're trying to type on your keyboard to get sound, you just need to make sure that this little piano is on up in the top right corner. And these slides and stuff will all be like, you can access these slides like after. So if you want to go back and like remember what I said about this little random little piano guy up here. So it's good to know that like audio tracks and MIDI tracks are different. They're not like, you can't really drag, like you can drag audio and try to make it MIDI if you wanted to. You could try to convert it. But you can't drag MIDI onto an audio. It's just like, no, what is that? So yeah, if you want to get into the MIDI editor, like say you have a MIDI clip like this, you just click it and then it's down here. And if you're stuck in this view over here, then you just click this little, really tiny box at the bottom right-hand corner. Oops, no, you click this, sorry. You click this little MIDI box down here. And then to get back, you would click the one next to it. And you can click Shift Tab to get out. So if I wanted to like change this drum beat, I would just double click it and then like delete some of these notes or something. And I changed it. Or if I wanted to add a bunch of, oops, whoa. I changed it, so. Yeah.
I have a question, Greta.
Yeah.
Do you use mostly built-in sounds that come with Ableton, or do you import your own samples, or how do you approach it in terms of what sounds you're using?
I usually use sounds that I get online. There's lots of like resources for finding samples. I mentioned like a few in my producer doc, Google Doc. Yeah, splice.com is really good, and I mention it later on in the presentation. But yeah, I mean, the Ableton sounds are great, and like they're totally usable. That's what they're kind of there for. So I've used like Ableton sounds before. It's not like unoriginal or anything like that. Like they have really nice full like hi-fi sounds. So I often have to like make them less hi-fi because they're like so like such good sounds, and I'm like, this sounds like very professional. So I have to like add some kind of deteriorating plugins or something. Okay, so yeah, so the plugins or devices are kind of like the main thing that you use. Like this is like all like the main area that you'll be working in pretty much is like, well, not really. You work in like this viewport, and then you work down here in this like little bar at the bottom. So I don't really have much stuff on here right now. It's pretty much just like there's nothing on this guitar track other than this tuner. This piano is just the device that's making the sound. There's a little bit of stuff on the drums. So I have like this EQ, which I'll explain about the EQ later on. And so I have these plugins happening. The Ableton ones, okay, wait, I'm getting lost. So they're kind of like just like these little building blocks, and they'll either make the sound, like for example, this piano down here. Sorry. It will make the sound. And then, for example, in this drum rack, like this EQ is only affecting the sound. Same with this, like all of this stuff. So the one that's making the sound usually goes first. Unless you have like MIDI effects that go before it that like modify the MIDI before it actually gets to the sound creating plugin. So yeah, it always goes left to right. So I think in other DAWs they usually stack stuff like vertically, like all your plugin chain will be a vertical thing, but in Ableton it's horizontal, so it's left to right. So yeah. And you can download like lots of plugins on the internet. I like to keep it simple and just use Ableton plugins if I can, just because it's super convenient. Like if you are sending your project to someone else who uses Ableton, then you know, they're all gonna guaranteed have the same plugins as you. So it's just like handy to be able to use the stock plugins as much as you can. Yeah, so here's a little bit of context of like where the idea of like plugins came from. So before there was like digital producing stuff, there was like stuff called like outboard gear, where you'd have like these huge units and you'd like plug them together and hook them up to your soundboard or whatever. So that's what they look like.
Greta, we've got a question. Someone's asking, how many plugins can you drag down?
How many plugins can you, drag down?
Can you drag down, or how many plugins can you use in a session, maybe?
You can use as many as you want to, as many as your computer allows you to. But it's a really good habit to try to do as what you want to do in as few plugins as possible, just because when you get to have these like kind of bigger sets, it gets really confusing, like what's going on if you try to open up a project that you haven't looked at for a while and you're just like, what's happening? It's really good practice to like try to use as few plugins as possible to get the sound that you're trying to go for. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this is why some plugins that you'll download will look like this, like with a bunch of knobs and like little fake lights and stuff like that. It's just because like they'll probably be like trying to replicate like an outboard plugin that was already invented. So they're kind of like a little simulator basically. But I like the Ableton plugins. They're really cute and they're like clean looking. Yeah, I already went through that. So Splice is great. They also let you rent plugins, which is really handy because plugins can be really expensive. Like it's actually ridiculous. I think it's a scam. But it's handy to like rent some if you need to rent like a mastering studio or something like that. You can rent that and then just use it for a month and then master all your songs and then only pay like $15 or whatever. So mastering studio will be like a plugin that has like this whole kind of all of this stuff that's meant for mastering. Okay. How are we doing for time? I realized that I forgot to start my timer.
It's 1:45, so we've been at it
Okay,
for
I guess
45 minutes.
Okay. So here in the tracks, you have like all of their controls right next to them. So this first little panel here is like your input and output, and monitoring settings. I won't explain like all of this in detail because it'll probably be kind of boring. But like I said, like there's always this little help view if you're like in Ableton and you're wondering what something does, you can just mouse over it. These controls over here you'll be using like a lot. So this big button here is just like to turn it on and off. So now the drums aren't playing. The solo button is this S here. You actually have to hold down Control if you want to solo multiple tracks at the same time, or else it will just change which one is soloed. This little red button is armed to record. So if you want to record something and you have like a MIDI device or something hooked up, you're gonna need to click this little button to make sure that this track is like accepting your stuff, your performance or your audio. So same thing if you're like recording either a MIDI track or an audio track. So yeah, just always make sure that that little red guy, if you're not hearing any sound or you're not recording, then you have to check for that. This is the volume. Panning is this little C. So if you're gonna like stereo pan something, if you want it to be just in the right channel, and I can play this and show you. Oh wait. So now it's just in the right here, the drums. So that's what that thing does. And then these down here are your return track sends, which is a little bit confusing. But when I talk about return tracks, it'll make sense, which I'm going to talk about right now. So in Ableton, they have this thing called return tracks, which are really handy. Basically what they do is apply a certain plugin or effect to multiple tracks. So they don't actually apply them to the tracks, but the tracks will go through them and get whatever plugin is being used. So that's just good to know, like, instead of applying like the same reverb to like multiple tracks, you can just send multiple tracks to the reverb. Does that kind of make sense? Is that sort of a fair explanation, I guess? You can put anything you want on these. It doesn't have to be reverb or delay. It's basically just a track. You can put different effect plugins in here. So they're down here by the master track in the arrangement view, and then they're over to the right in the session view. Okay, so another concept is automation. And automation is basically something that's automated, that's happening without you doing it. So you can kind of like sort of program stuff to happen in the song that will tweak like a plugin that's happening, or a device that's happening, I guess I should say device. So to get there, you just click this little like 2 dots with a line going through it. And then you'll see all these like red lines. And then it'll correspond to whichever 2 boxes are here. So like if I wanted to, if I wanted to change the, actually that's complicated. If I wanted to change the volume, like say I wanted the keyboard to like fade out. I would just kind of go in here and do that. So the keyboard faded. If you want it to happen more slowly, then you just make the line, the curve less sharp. So that's how to do automation, and how to get out is you just click that little button. Okay. So is there any other questions? I think we'll probably take like a little break and then start making like a little beat afterwards. But if anyone has any questions for the last like whatever couple minutes, or not.
None in the chat at the moment.
Okay. I'll maybe wait like a minute. Am I going like at an okay pace? I know it's like a lot to take in. especially if you're like, you know, obviously if you're not familiar like with audio stuff, it can be like a bit of a learning curve. It's hard for me to kind of like, I have to kind of remember, like, I'm a beginner, so it's kind of easy for me to remember what it was like when I started. But I understand like being kind of disoriented. Like right now I'm learning like this like game engine and I'm just like, what the heck is going on? None of this makes sense. Like I can't even like process like information because I just am so disoriented the whole time. But
Someone asks, there's a couple questions now. Can you send a track to multiple returns?
yeah. Yeah, so you have like these that I talked about in the track controls. So over in the right hand, these tracks, there's these little things. They right now say negative infinity, negative inf. So these are the sends. So you can drag, like if I want full reverb on this guitar, I would drag that all the way up to 0. Can't really hear it, but there's reverb there. And if I want a delay, now there's like delay happening. So yeah, that sounds crazy. So you can have like more of these too. Like you can have like, I don't know, let's see how many you can have. Oops. Yeah, so I'm assuming you can have like a bunch. And then they'll just show up as more sends in this little thing.
There's another question. Someone wants to send their song so someone else can master it. They're asking, do I just export the song or the tracks separately?
If you're getting it mastered, it would be one track. But if you're getting it mixed, which isn't in the question, but if you were getting it mixed, you would have to send all your separate tracks. So, and there's ways of exporting like all of your individual tracks. There's a bunch of like options of what you would want to do. So
you'd recommend just exporting as a WAV file and sending it to someone to master?
Yeah. WAV files are like you're good to go with the WAV. It's like full quality. You usually want like the highest bit depth. Yeah. If you're just sending it, like say you want to just send it to your friend or something and you want to send it over text or something like that, you can just export an MP3, and then MP3 files are really small. So, but yeah, waves are good for like stems and stuff like that.
And that's it for the questions at the moment. Other people are saying that the pace you're at is good.
Okay, so let's take a little break. And then we'll come back and actually do fun stuff. Because this was a lot of like information very fast. So
how long would you like to break for?
More sense in the next part.
5 minutes? 10 minutes?
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me. Like we could do.
Sure, let's take a 10-minute break, come back at 2:05 and start making a song or a beat or something.
Okay.
Okay, we'll see you all in 10 minutes. All right, we are back, hopefully. Greta, are you there?
So I'm gonna make a new set. I'll just use the file menu to make a new live set here. I'm not gonna save my changes. Okay. So normally, I guess you would kind of, I mean, often I like just forget to set the BPM and the temp and the time signature. But it's good to do that kind of before. You can always change your time signature throughout your song. It just gets a little bit like if you are recording audio, like actual audio, it will like warp your audio, which is fine. Usually it works if you're just, you know, going not like too many, not too much faster, too much slower, but if you're doing a huge jump, it's like good to, like if you want to make a fast tempo song, you should set the tempo before you start making it. So maybe I'll do, like, what should I do? Maybe 136. I don't know. Okay. And I'm just going to do 4/4. So I'm going to start with
How did you hear that metronome sound?
I just clicked this little button, and then that turns it on. And so if I hit play, I'll hear it.
Right.
And it'll be on if I record also. So yeah. And you can change the sound if you don't like the weird clicky sound. You could make it like a wood block. So I usually don't like the metronome. Like, this is why I always start with drums, because I need like something that's not a beeping sound to play music to, I guess.
Yeah, what I do in other programs often is just do like on every beat like a kick drum, and then as soon as I have other things built on top of it, I'll just remove that.
Yeah, that's
like
also another.
it's like a tolerable click track kind of.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to start with 808 Core Kit, which I feel like is one of the most popular kits.
There's just another question about the click. Are you able to have it on while recording but not have the sound record?
Yeah. If you're recording with headphones, like if it's playing like in your monitors, do you mean? Like if it...
Yeah, I think they're asking like if you use the click track as a guide to record, will it be sort of stuck in your recording, or can you remove it?
It's just like a external sound that is not in your set. It's just a little function that you can use. Okay. So if you go into, like, I'm going to use all Ableton sounds just to keep it simple. So this is like your drum section over here in the left-hand side. There's all these kits that you can use. But I'm going to use this one. Okay, and so I'm going to make a MIDI clip now. I can just double click on the timeline and it'll make a clip for me. So I usually want to make it at the start. If I'm just using arrangement view, I want to make it at the start so that when I hit play, it starts. If I made it over here, then I would have to like go over there. So here's my MIDI track. If I open up the editor, the MIDI editor, then I can start placing notes down. So I'll have to get my little pencil tool out, which if you right click, you can hit draw mode or hit B. And then you have to enable this little headphone symbol in the corner over here. And then you'll be able to hear actually the notes that you're playing. So usually like if you're making like a standard kind of like rock-ish and beat or whatever, you would want your kick drum to be like on the 1 and the 3, which is like, if you look at the numbers up here, it's kind of helpful because you can see this is like the 1 and this is the 2 and this is the 3 and the 4. So now we have this going on, and if I want to loop it, I'll just go up here in that little this little menu up here and then click this loop guy on here. And I'll just loop this section. And so maybe I'll put the snare on the 2 and the 4. And I'll put some hi-hats in here. On all the quarter or all the 8th notes. Something. All the little notes. This one's off. And then you can do whatever. Like, it doesn't need to be, obviously, it doesn't need to be this, but. There's our little drum beat. In order to loop it, we just need to make sure that this little loop button right next to the MIDI editor over here is on. And then if you drag it out, it will just loop this beat. Okay. So now I'm gonna drag in another drum beat, just like a stock drum beat that they give you. And I'll compare these two. So this one has a bit more stuff going on. There's a lot more notes. But also what you can kind of hear is that not all the notes are hitting like at the same sound, the same volume level. And it's not super obvious, but we can see down here that actually all of the velocities are different. So this little panel that you can pull out will tell you like which note is hitting how hard, basically. So when you're recording a MIDI performance, like say you're playing a song on piano and your piano has like velocity sensitivity, it'll be able to like pick up how hard you're playing the keys, each key, and then tell that to the program that's playing the MIDI. So you'll be able to get like this like, kind of like dynamic performance, I guess, from that. So this drum beat just has this like all manually plugged in. Like you can see like all of these notes they're hitting differently. You can even like we could go into ours and we could change it and we could make it kind of different like that. Like say we wanted the hi-hats. Usually you kind of want your hi-hats to be, if you're using hi-hats, you want them to kind of be a little bit more dynamic because they get kind of tiring for your ears just because they're such a kind of like high frequency. So they can get tiring to listen to if they're always hitting at the same. It just helps kind of like our ears feel more natural, or it helps it to feel more natural to our ears, if that makes sense. But if we don't want to bother with adjusting each one of these little things, we can actually just do it like with a MIDI velocity modifier. And this is where it gets fun. I actually recently discovered kind of like the whole MIDI effects area. So say we wanted to make the velocity all the same. We would just take a preset from here. Like say we wanted it to be like fixed 96. So it would fix them all at 96, which would be like right here. Doesn't matter what is happening in here, what the actual velocities are at, it will just override it. So we have that fixed 96, and then say we wanted to add like a little bit of dynamic to it, we could add this dynamic one right after, and then we could turn up this little random knob so we would get some kind of random stuff happening. So if I crank that all the way up, you can definitely hear like some of the notes are like way quieter. Is that really loud?
It was okay for me.
Okay.
Someone's asking, do the MIDI effects apply to the whole track or just the selected area?
The whole track. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, anything that's on the track, it's just like, it's the whole track. The clip adjustments would be kind of like in the clip, if that makes sense. If you double click the clip, all of these settings over here to the left-hand side, all of these will apply just to that clip. And there's like more stuff happening if you click that.
Another question someone's asking, can you automate the MIDI effect?
Yeah, you can automate anything that happens in your chain pretty much, as long as it's like, yeah, you can automate like so much stuff. You can also record automation. So if you have nothing armed and you just want to record automation, you would just hit record. And then anything that I click in here, like if I just turn the drum kit off, but it records what I did. So you can see this little red dot next to the track on and off, or the plugin on and off. That's because I just modified it while I was recording. So that's really, I don't really use it that much, to be honest, but it's really handy, I guess, if you're just trying to do something and you don't want to have to go into the automation and then, you know, find the thing and then change the parameter or whatever. So so there's another thing called grooves, which is really cool. So if you double click a clip and you go into the clip settings, there's this little option, there's this little box here that says groove. And if you click this little like changing thing, I don't know, 2 arrow thing, I don't know. If you see like where my mouse is over here, you'll be able to like swap out different grooves. So you could apply like, I'm gonna use one that's like obvious. Here, let's try swing. So if I double click that, it'll go in here, and then I have that selected. So now this is like a swing beat all of a sudden. So that's cool. Yeah.
There's another question here. Someone's asking, they've made a little drum beat and they just want it to repeat or loop. Can you show them how to do that? Not sure if this is the right time for that, but at some point, can you show how to loop a drum beat?
Yeah, no, sometimes it's easy to miss like stuff. So in order to loop it, you would just like select it and you would get to this MIDI editor. And if you were in like this other view, you would click this thing down here where my mouse is. These little boxes in the very far left or far right down corner bottom corner. You would get here, and then you would click this button over here that says loop, and it's in the left quadrant. And then once you drag it out, then it will loop it. So if you didn't have that selected and you tried to drag it out, it would just drag out the MIDI clip if you wanted to extend it. Yeah, so that's how to like loop it.
And then another person's asking, possibly because I interrupted, can you review the groove thing you just ran through?
Yeah, okay. So to get there, you would select a clip, and then you would go into the clip settings. There is another way that you can do it just by clicking this little wavy thing over in the corner, or the side, top left corner of the bottom part. You would click that, and then this is going to be your groove pool, which is like all the grooves that you're using in your set. So we don't have any right now because I deleted the swing. So I would just right click, I'd browse, I could find it in here, and then I could drag it out onto my clip, and then that would put it in here. But I just like to access it just by clicking a clip and then going over to this groove area. When you have a groove that's on in here on a certain clip, also it doesn't apply to all the clips. It just applies to one clip, whichever clip is selected. So you can have multiple different grooves on different clips. And if you want one groove to be on like all of the clips in a track, you'll have to select all of them. Not individually, you can just highlight all of them, and then you can go into the settings and edit them all and change the groove. So it's just good to know that it only applies on the one clip. So when you have it selected in here, the notes are being played swung, but they're not actually moved physically in the clip. So if you wanted to move them, you would just click this button called commit. And then it would actually, like if you see here, I'll do it again, and then watch the like little notes. They move. So they move to be whatever the swing groove is. So yeah. I don't really commit the grooves just because it's like permanent kind of, so you would have to like re-quantize them to get them to be like a straight beat again if you wanted that. But it is there like if you need them to commit, you can do that. So does that make sense for the grooves?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so if you clicked commit, once you commit it, it's like the notes are changed. You can undo it and stuff, but like just by hitting Control Z. But like once you do it, you can't revert it. You'd have to just like re-quantize it to the grid or change it. And I can explain quantization too a little bit later on when I do the piano stuff, probably. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna do a bass sound. I'm gonna do this bass. And to apply a effect, you just drag it. So I could drag it here, I could drag it down here, I could drag it just into this space over here, and it will just make a new track for me. So now I have this bass sound. And in order to make I found out how to make this fun arpeggiator sound. So basically, if you just take the arpeggiator modifier, which is, I don't know why I'm calling it a modifier, but that's how I think of it. I don't think that's a technical term. It's just a device, but okay, so arpeggiator. So I'll take that, I'll put it down here. And so now whenever I play, it's going to play like a little sequence. So I'm going to change this to different setting. And it's totally okay. Like, I feel like it's good to, you know, hear this like said, but it's totally okay to like not know what buttons do. Like, I don't know like half the buttons in Ableton. Like, I just kind of make it up. I think like when you start, I feel like it's like, you know, you want to know what everything does. At least that's kind of what I was like when I started. But then once you, like, as you go, you just kind of learn things and you realize that nobody actually knows what they're doing, basically. Especially for producing, because what producing is like, you're just making sounds. Like, you can do, it's the creative process. You can do whatever you want to. It's more like if you want to be, you know, like a mixing engineer or like an audio engineer, that you would like need to, you know, learn about, you know, how things are happening or what's going on. Obviously, it's good to know that stuff, but I think it's sometimes like kind of fun when you don't know what's going on and you're just clicking buttons. So, yeah. So if I click like buttons, I'm not going to explain what I'm doing because I probably don't really know what I'm doing. Okay. So now I'm going to put a chord, like a chord thing on this. So it'll play a chord. But I'm going to put it before the arpeggiator. So it's going to play different notes. So now I'm going to record something. So I'm going to make sure that my track is armed. And then I'm going to hit record. Oops. I'm going to take the swing off of here.
Are you just using your computer keyboard as like a piano keyboard?
Yeah.
And you're just doing two notes, right? Back and forth, and they're arpeggiated.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm just holding down two notes. So you can see these are the two notes that I held down. It's kind of interesting with the arpeggiator because sometimes
Can you determine what key the arpeggiator, like what notes it's going to hit?
Yeah.
Or is it okay?
Yeah. If you wanted to, this chord thing is kind of interesting because it's like these shift knobs just like change the note that's being played, but you don't really know like what note it's being played.
I guess I meant what scale. Sorry, but
yeah.
You can change what chord, what type of chord is going to be played or something.
Yeah. It says here, it says key, and it's just in C. So I think if I change that, maybe not. Oh wait, no, that's for transpose. I don't really know what that does. But there are like MIDI effects that you can use to change the scale and the key and stuff like that. So if I wanted it to be like this Slendro, I don't know what that is, but I think it would. Yeah, so you can kind of hear it's changing whatever scale it's using.
Cool, thanks.
And you can even apply that like if you're trying to record something, but you don't like maybe you don't know what scale how to play the scale, then you can just hit random notes, and as long as you have a scale plugin or device on your track, then it will just play all the right notes, and you won't be able to hit a wrong note. So and sometimes you have to do a little bit of like cleaning up with your clips, whatever you recorded. So like I was consolidating earlier, which like if I were to just record something really fast. This is like, I would probably maybe want to move it so that the borders are right on the lines. Just so that everything's kind of like in time, I guess. You usually want to, like if you're recording something that's like rhythmic and maybe it's like sort of more like towards pop music, you would want to kind of make sure that things like line up on the one. That's kind of abstract to say that, but like I would want to start, you know, like on the one, so right here. So it's not like this. But like, for example, like when I recorded this take over here, I don't think I was like, it says that I was on, but sometimes the arpeggiators are kind of weird because sometimes it'll like start on a different note depending on when you hit it, like when you hit the key. So that's why I was just consolidating just to make sure that it was like not playing, like not getting cut off, if that makes sense. So in order to consolidate something, like for example, if I wanted to make this whole drum beat just one drum beat instead of this, for whatever reason, if I wanted to do that, I would just select all of them, I would right click, and then I would hit consolidate, which just turns it into one big MIDI clip. So the two things that I use a lot are crop and consolidate. So if I recorded, oh whoops, oh my god, what just happened? See how this is a little bit off here? I would just right click and then I would click crop. Oh wait, no, I would drag this over here and then I would click crop, because if you drag like a MIDI clip, it just edits the clip in the arrangement view. It doesn't actually change how long the clip actually is, which is definitely a bit of a learning curve at first, is like dealing with like MIDI clips and like where do they end. So if you just want it to be this and you're sure about that, you would just right click and click crop. So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah. This also, I didn't record it to the beat, so it's all messed up. So now I just hit quantize. So here, this is a good example. See how these notes are like not on the lines? They're like here's the one. So if I had the metronome on here, it's not actually hitting on the 1 and the 3 and the 2 and the, you know, so I would highlight all them, and then I would make sure that my quantize settings are set to like, this is 1/4, so that's like the quarter note, so it's like the most strict quantization, I guess. You want to make sure it's at 100% if you want it to be like snap right to the grid. And then you do start and end. So the starts goes to the grid, and so does the end of the note. So then you just hit OK, and then now they like click perfectly in here. So
Got a question here from someone saying, how do I start a MIDI clip? What's the first step? Could you go over starting that again, please?
Yeah, so if you want to create a MIDI clip, what you could do, if you want it to be like a longer MIDI clip, you could highlight this, like however long you want it to be. And then you would right click and you would click insert MIDI clips. And the shortcut is Control-Shift-M. But if you just wanted to make like, say like a drum beat or something really small, you just double click and it highlights it and then opens it. So yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to make another instrument. I'm gonna try doing some sampling. So this is gonna be interesting. Okay. I'm kind of running out of time. Okay. So I'm gonna use this like big long guitar take. And I'm just gonna, wait, no, sorry, I'm not gonna drag it into the track. I'm gonna make a new track just by going over to this side and right clicking, and then I'll insert a MIDI track. Because even though it's an audio sample, we're gonna be using a sampling device, and then we're gonna be using MIDI. So I'll go into this categories menu and I'll go to instruments, and then I'll go to this little device called Simpler. And if you're just looking for it, there's a really handy search bar up here if you just want to type in Simpler. So Simpler is like their sampler. That's just like their funny name for it. So you can drag any sample you want into this little thing. And then it'll have the whole sample in there. So you can see it starts way at the start. So if I wanted to change it, like say I wanted it to go over here, I could just drag these little things. So now it's playing that. The only thing is that I don't think this sample is actually in tune. So I'm gonna have to tune it, which is a big part of sampling because you always want, it doesn't even matter if the sample itself is in tune. Sorry, actually delete that. It does matter if it's in tune. So in order to find out like whether it's in tune or not, we'll make a MIDI clip. We'll solo this track just so that we can zero in. I'm gonna make a C note. So I'll just make sure that like C, and there's tons of tutorials for this because this is a big part of like using samples is like getting them to be in key. So there's like lots of like really good YouTube tutorials about this. But the way that I figured out how to do it is you just make a C note so that you know that you want to basically like align the C's. So you want your C to be playing, like the C that you're playing on your keyboard, you want that to be a C note, if that makes sense. So where is my C? Okay, so if I hit play, I'll have to find somewhere on here where it actually, the tuner actually picks up the sound. And I'll have to turn it down. Sorry if that was loud. Okay. So see, you can see in the tuner, it's like it's kind of like a sharp A. So it's over here. And it's hitting as an A. So now what we need to do is like, we need to transpose it, which means change the note, or change the tuning, or changing the frequency. It's like transposing it, so making it higher pitched or lower pitched. So in order to find that, sometimes you have to kind of like search around a little bit to find where the transpose knob is. But it's over here in controls, and it just says transp. It just says trans P. So we'll want to take this up to 3. So we'll go A, B, or A sharp, B, C. And then we can see that's a C. So now we'll want to slightly tweak it because it's still a little bit sharp. And so that's what the detune is for. So transpose, we'll transpose like a whole or a half step. So from a C to a C sharp or a C sharp to a D. And then detune will actually like make it, if it's sharp, it'll make it, you know, not sharp, or if we want it to be sharp, it'll make it sharp or flat. So now we can use this detune to fix how sharp it is. And sometimes it'll like be a little bit different. Sometimes it's okay if it's not like exactly on there for the entire duration of the sample. But see, now we can hear it sounds way better. Kind of. Depending on what note is playing. So don't worry if that didn't really make sense, because there's like tons of tutorials. And it's okay if you don't have like music theory knowledge too, because a lot of this stuff is just like any other program. You know, if you're trying to make like a movie, but maybe you don't know like how a movie is made, you can still make a movie with iMovie, like, or with, you know, whatever movie software you're gonna use. So it's, at the end of the day, it's like, it's just knobs and numbers, and it does relate to like musical theory, but not as much as like you might think. But theory is also like, theory is fun, and like something that I've realized is like when I started producing, I had like a little bit of theory knowledge, but I wasn't really using it. Like I would basically just kind of do notes that sounded good together. And so that was comfortable for me. And I found it kind of stressful to think about like incorporating theory into it. But now that I've kind of like, you know, been more used to producing, now I'm kind of wanting to dive into that. So it's good to kind of like remember that you don't have to learn everything at once. Like little bits and pieces will come as you go, kind of thing. So I'm gonna try recording a little bit of this. That sounds bad. I think it's because it's really loud. Let's see what happens when I drag this. I'm kind of of trying to like repeat what's going on in the bass into the guitar. I don't know if that's in tune. I thought I did a good job, but maybe I didn't. Whatever, doesn't matter. Okay, I'm gonna put on a little piano. Oops. Okay, so let's say I like that. So if I didn't actually record it, there's actually a really cool like way that you can just insert what you just recorded right into the thing. So if you forgot to hit record, or maybe like, you know, you just don't want to use record because it like jinxes you or something, you can just hit Control Shift C. So here's an example. Like if I'm playing that, I'm not hitting record, then I can just insert it there. So it's secretly recording all of the MIDI stuff without you knowing. This is not the same for audio. Audio is like if you hit record, it's recording. It's not recording if you're not recording. But MIDI, it's like secretly always recording stuff. So I just found that out, but like how many times like I've like really been trying to get the right take, or like got the right take and then couldn't record it afterwards. Yeah, it is like recording for shy people. Okay. Okay, so it's kind of, I'm at 250 right now. So I'm just gonna abandon this beat because kind of, I don't know, I think I botched the sample thing, so I'm gonna open up like an example of like what maybe like a finished song could look like if, you know, once it has like a million tracks and a bunch of stuff going on.
Does it Ableton autosave like Premiere or Adobe's programs and stuff, or do you have to manually save as you go?
You have to save as you go. It does autosave, like if it crashes, usually there'll be a backup. It saves backups and you're in a backup folder in the project folder. But you do have to like save. Like I always hit save like all the time compulsively.
Okay.
Okay, so here's a project. Oh no, I don't have certain plugins anymore. That's okay. I was renting some plugins, so. Okay. So this is like one of my songs from my last EP. It's I feel kind of self-conscious because I feel like it's kind of corny to like talk about your own stuff for presentations. I don't know why. But like none of my friends really use Ableton, so I couldn't like show projects and a different project. So, and my brother has like the Suite edition, which isn't compatible with like my standard Ableton. So his projects are like there's always like so much going on in them, and I'm always like, what the heck is happening? Okay. So this is like, it has a decent amount of tracks. I have this like big long kind of thing, intro thing. And this isn't mixed. I got this mixed, so this is just the project before mixing. So over here, I'll have like drum kit. I have like a compressor over here. Some erosion, I guess. On these vocals, this is what my EQ looks like for the vocals. So I didn't really get to talk about EQ, but basically it's like a visual representation of the sound, and it's really cool when you first learn about it, because like here, if I solo this drum kit, you can, oh wait, that's a bad example. I'll just put an EQ on the master. So this is the whole song. So you can see the bass drum over here. You can see kind of like the hi-hats that are happening over in the far right. So the frequency will go like low to high from left to right. Oh no. I'm frozen.
No, you're frozen. I think you're okay. It might be with Ramona's computer, unfortunately. I think it looks okay from my end.
Okay. Sorry, Ramona. Yeah, so does that make sense? Kind of like you can see visually what's happening. Oh no. The stream is going down.
If you
Maybe
change,
it's because I have a huge project open. I wonder if that's why. Hopefully not.
yeah, it's okay on my end too. I think it's maybe it's not coming from you. I have a question. If you change, like if you bring up the EQ for like the whole song, like you just did, can you show us like what would happen if you change those sort of like parameter benchmarker thingies, or like what that does?
So.
And also someone's asking, what does EQ do, just in simple terms?
Yeah, so I'm sad that I didn't get to explain this because I kind of was getting all, sorry, I had like more slides. Okay, here we are. Okay, so basically what EQ does is you're kind of like, you're taking your audio and you have the full spectrum, and you could either boost or cut certain frequency areas. So if I wanted to like just do a hard like high pass or low cut filter like this, to see how it's going down, you're barely gonna hear like the low end. And so now you can just hear the highs. So does that kind of make sense? Like, Ableton has kind of these presets in the EQ, and there's one called cheesy speaker, which just makes it sound like a really bad speaker. So it kind of has that like lo-fi. So you're not really hearing the lows and you're not really hearing the highs. You're kind of just in this limited range here. So yeah, does that make sense?
It's really cool.
Okay. So I had more. I know we're like at 3 o'clock now. But is stuff that I didn't say. So I don't know, it's up to, I guess.
Does anybody have any burning questions that maybe you'd like to ask Greta as a way to sort of round off the workshop today?
Something I do want to mention is the collect all and save function. It's just good to know about because if you're making a set and you want to send it to one of your friends who has Ableton, or you want to move it if you want to move it to a different computer, it doesn't actually save all of the audio files into the file. You have to manually do it, and it's super easy. You just go to File, and then you go Collect All and Save. And it'll basically just take all the samples that you're using, if you're using any Ableton sounds or if you're using your own samples that are somewhere else. It'll take them, it'll copy them into the folder so that you can just send the folder and it will have everything that you need in it. So that's good to know about. Sorry. Okay.
So a couple questions here.
Yeah.
Do you see them?
Yeah. Yeah, there's different kits. They all kind of have different sounds. So the Ableton kits, and you can, like if you wanted to download samples and then use those samples, like if you wanted to get like realistic drum sounds, free, like royalty-free realistic drum sounds, you just type that into Google and like download some samples and drag them into your drum kit, which would probably need maybe like a tutorial for that if you wanted to do that. But it's super easy. You would just drag them basically into here. But there's also like kits in Ableton that sound realistic too, so you don't even have to go anywhere to find them. So I don't know, these are all pretty electronic-y sounding. Like this one's a little bit more. So there's all these kits that you can kind of just play around with. So okay, all my sound. I actually don't know Shelby. Oh. I'm not sure. That's a hard question to answer because I'm not sure if that's in like the audio recordings or if it's your computer. But if you're getting skipping, it could be because maybe you're going over on your CPU that is in the top right corner. If it's like getting up to like 60 or 40% or even higher, then that could be because of your CPU. So it could be because of your computer. Yeah, the built-in kits are great in Ableton.
Okay. Oh yeah, just maybe a quick explanation of bouncing, what bouncing is and how it bounces.
So bouncing is just exporting. They kind of mean the same thing. So in order to export it, you would go to you would open the export menu. I'm gonna delete that. And then you would pick like if you wanted the master track to be exported, so that's like the whole track. That like basically your track runs through this master channel. So that's why when I had the EQ on the master channel, that it was affecting the entire song. So when you're exporting, it just takes the master track and exports that. But if you wanted to get, like, say you wanted to get individual tracks, if you wanted to send them to a mixer or a friend or something, you would just go all individual tracks, basically. And there's also, like, a bunch of different settings. Like, you could do selected tracks, and then select which ones that you want to export. So, yeah. Does that... Oh, what do I mean by different?
Oh, I'm just referring to Joelle, if I'm saying that right.
Oh. Oh. Okay. There's something called normalize, which I have turned off. Normalize, I wish I could have like a very good definition, but basically it's kind of, it will modify like how loud something is. It will kind of like, you would have to look up a definition of it, but normalize affects like the volume. It can affect the volume. So if you're just wanting it to be exactly how you hear it in your editor, then just turn normalize off and it will be like regular. So sometimes volume can be a little bit of a thing at first, because sometimes when we're making stuff, we don't pay attention to how loud or quiet it is in comparison to other things. So if you're exporting a song to send to your friend, you might accidentally export it and it's super quiet, so you might have to like turn it up or something, because yeah, that's just a thing, I guess. But I don't have like time really to talk about. Is it like okay if we go over, or is it
Sure.
good?
Yeah, whatever. It's
I will have like the slides available, so if you wanted to look and see what I didn't say. Yeah. So like if something's at 0 on your track, that means that it's loud. Like 0 is loud. Usually on most streaming services like Spotify and Apple Music, I think stuff hits like at around -3. So that's even quieter than 0, but it's still loud. Like that's loud because they're gonna want it to be like, that's like the regular volume, you know, like a YouTube video would want to be around there. Like pretty much all media is, they're gonna want to have like a consistent loudness. So when we make music, we're normally making it quieter than that. We're normally going for about -10, because when we mix it, we want to have it sit around -10, so that when we master it, we can get it up to the volume that we want it to be at. Yeah. Sorry, I got distracted with the chat. When we master it, we want to be able to have control in order to get it up to the level that it needs to be at on streaming services. So that will come later. So it's totally fine if you're bouncing out like a song and it's quieter than most songs, because that's kind of just the reality of producing and stuff. But it'll get bumped up when we master it. Yeah, because I mean, when we're producing, we don't really pay attention, you know, how loud things are. We just like turn up our speakers or something. So
yeah, the worst thing ever is to be like to your pal, like check out the song, and then they have to crank it, and then when they go to listen to their other favorite artists, and then it blows the speakers because they had to turn it up too loud. It's like beginner mistake happens a lot.
Yeah. That's kind of what the normalize function is for a little bit, I think, is that it kind of like controls the volume so that it's different. But I don't want to say wrong information because I don't actually know really. I just turn it off.
Well, I know that because we are getting close to out of time, I want to thank you, Greta, for sharing your skills with us today and showing us how you work in Ableton. I think it's really cool to see people using Ableton as an instrument in itself. And it's really cool to see how people interact differently with it. So thank you for sharing that with us. Thanks everybody for coming. I will email out the doc to everybody with Greta's slides and the Google Doc and everything that she's put together. So you'll get an email from me sometime in the coming days with all of that. So it's in one place for you. Okay, thanks again, everyone. Take care and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.